At dawn, so again, most places becoming dry once more by this time tomorrow. Temperatures generally 9 to 13 Celsius. Into tomorrow, some wet weather, certainly across the Northern Isles, possible at first, but for most it's a dry, fine day. Still a few showers again over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but generally bright conditions after those overnight thunderstorms clear through. So again, feeling pretty pleasant in the sunny spells. May turn a little hazy, the sunshine at times, but we'll still see those temperatures getting into the high teens or the low 20s. Do watch out, though, for those thunderstorms arriving overnight.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Patrick Christie's here alongside Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio and online. Welcome to The Point.
Yes, and it's Wednesday today, which means one thing. Today's show is entirely viewer-led.
Indeed, that's right. So you've been getting in touch with us all week, letting us know what you want us to discuss today.
Yes, and thank you to everybody who has been getting in touch, our viewers and listeners, with suggestions. We're looking at the power of the World Health Organisation, whether the breakup of the union is on the brink, and my personal favourite, British pork.
Absolutely, yes. And the most important bit as well, your views. So we'd love to hear your opinions about everything we have for you today. So get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
That's all coming up until midday, and we get along just after the headlines. We'll get you everything coming up just after the headlines with Rosie Wright.
A very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Inflation has risen to its highest rate in 40 years, rising now to 9% in the 12 months to April. The rise has largely been driven by the increasing cost of fuel and energy. The Chancellor said he was unable to completely protect people from global challenges, but that the government was helping where possible. Labour says they would now force a vote for an emergency budget in Parliament. Our economics and business editor Liam Halligan says many households will struggle.
behind this data, there are, many hundreds of thousands, millions of households struggling, because what inflation is, it's the rise in the cost of living from April 2021 to April 2022. And on the numbers, that is now 9%.
A Conservative MP has been released on bail pending further investigation after being arrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences. The man, who can't be named for legal reasons, is in his 50s. He's also accused of abusing a position of trust and misconduct in public office. The Tory Chief Whip has asked the MP to stay away from Parliament during the investigation. Scotland Yard says the offences are alleged to have taken place in London between 2002 and 2009. The Foreign Secretary says it would be very positive if the UK and the EU could negotiate a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but there must not be a delay. Liz Truss has set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. The Democratic Unionist Party is currently refusing to join the executive instalment until a solution is found. The Northern Ireland Minister, Conor Burns, told GB News the government couldn't idly stand by.
This is more important to get this right for our United Kingdom and for communities in Northern Ireland than almost any other foreign policy or economic objective, and that is our determination. We hope that the EU will re-engage with us in a spirit of compromise and create the necessary space to allow us to find a way through that. But we will legislate in the interests of our own country if that's what it comes to.
Is that a threat?
No, it's just a reality.
Finland and Sweden have formally applied to join NATO. The move's been spurred on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Swedish and Finnish ambassadors to NATO visited the organisation's headquarters in Brussels with their letters of application to present to Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Ratification of all 30 members of the alliance could take up to a year. The parents of a teenager who died from an allergic reaction to a pret-a-manger baguette have now set up a new trial to treat food allergies. The family of 15-year-old Natasha Eden-Laperouse are aiming to make food allergies history. They're investigating whether peanut and milk products taken under medical supervision can be used to treat common allergies. It could mean people don't have to avoid foods with small amounts of allergens due to their production process. Almost half of the nurses and midwives hired last year have come from abroad. It's prompted concern from leading nurses over how sustainable it will be to maintain recruitment of the workforce. It's figures from the Nursing and Midwifery Council that show the majority of new appointees have come from India and the Philippines. Whilst overall recruitment is up, there's also concern of the numbers leaving the profession, with some citing work pressure as one of their reasons for resignation. Pollution was responsible for 1 in 6 deaths worldwide in 2019. New research published in the medical journal The Lancet found air, chemical and water pollution accounted for 9 million deaths globally. That's a figure that hasn't now changed in 4 years. The number of deaths associated with pollution and extreme poverty, like having unclean water, have fallen. But that decrease was offset by increased deaths from outdoor pollution and toxic chemicals. In Seville, streets are closed, barriers are set up and officers are on alert as more than 100,000 Scottish football fans arrive in the Spanish city. Rangers supporters can already be seen partying outside the stadium as they look forward to the Europa League final. The last and only time the Scottish club has ever won a European trophy was half a century ago. They kick off against Eintracht Frankfurt at 7 tonight. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. The time is 10:07 and it's Wednesday 18th of May and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online.
Right, so Wednesday obviously means one thing and one thing only. This, of course, is your show. Every single issue we're discussing today has been requested by you, our lovely viewers and listeners.
That's right, and all week we've been asking you to tell us what you want us to talk about, what you think you're not hearing enough of in the news, and we've delivered.
We have indeed, yes. Well, so Sue got in touch, cracking name Sue, my mum's called Sue, and asked us to explain what the World Health Organization is quietly getting up to as they give themselves even more power to control future pandemic responses globally. I think it's a bit sinister, this, to be honest with you. But anyway, we'll be joined by communicable disease expert Dr. Pankanya to walk you through it all.
Yes, and we're really moved, we have been over the last couple of days, by some of you getting in touch to share with us in our inbox your experiences of coping with mental health. Tim asked us if we could talk about whether we're increasingly losing a sense of meaning in society and whether that has anything to do with why we're seeing so much mental health. Well, author and mental health advocate Rachel Kelly will join us to talk to us about that.
Yes, and with the cost of living crisis, many of you got in touch to say you're struggling to bring home the bacon. And quite literally, in some cases, Jean wants to know why British meat is so expensive. We'll be live with a butcher, and grill her with all your griller. I see what you did there. With all your questions, yes.
Yes, and regular viewers will know how much I love pork, so yeah, that's a very serious issue to me. But on a serious note, we'll also be catching up with Nathan Dunn again, a man who's walking from the top of the UK to the bottom of the UK, barefoot no less, to raise money for mental health. Well, stay tuned for that because we do have him live and he's going to be giving us an update. I think he's halfway through right now.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. And thank you very much, everybody. Cheeky little plug, by the way, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. You lovely people got us up to £13,000 yesterday, so well done. We'll go to that later in the show. Packed show, don't worry, we've got loads of time for your views as well. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Stay tuned.
Well, as we say, today's Wednesday, so it's our viewer-led show, or listener-led show, and one topic many of you have been asking us to talk about is the power of the World Health Organization and its pandemic treaty, which is due to be discussed later this month, and we got many emails about this.
We did. We were inundated. Anyway, one is from GB News viewer and listener Sue. Yes, again, cracking name, Sue. The WHO is quietly setting up a globalised response to all future health emergencies, not our own government. This must be discussed as a matter of urgency before we find ourselves ruled by China on the next lockdown. Well, we are discussing it as a matter of urgency.
Yes, well, next week, the World Health Organization will invite all the world's countries, excluding Taiwan, however, at China's request, to meet and discuss a pandemic accord that will expand the WHO's powers to intervene with sovereign governments in the event of another global health emergency, such as the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, there's a lot to get stuck into here, actually, because would that mean that we always have to behave exactly the same way as every other nation? One of the concerns with this is that, actually, it would bring a unified response, right? So, for example, you know how we were able to get our own vaccines, basically, and procure those, or we were locking down when other people weren't, or vice versa. I think one of the concerns for me with this is that it would make sure that everybody has to act exactly the same way all the time.
Yeah, and that's not an effective way to deal with things, because populations are different, they have different habits in terms of movement, in terms of population density, for example. What works for one country will not necessarily work for another country. And they have different cultures as well. Some countries are more liberal, some are more authoritarian. So I don't think they'll take kindly to having this singular approach. And I have questions, major questions, about what this means for the sovereignty of states, you know?
Yeah, I've got more questions than that. My big question is, why the heck does the WHO continue to exist, right? So this thing is not fit for purpose. It's basically in China's back pocket, which explains why they didn't say or do anything really at the start of this pandemic. There is a tweet up, I believe, still from the WHO that says that the COVID is not transmissible human to human. They got this catastrophically wrong. They are essentially, as far as I can see, a bunch of people pretty much on the take. I mean, it was Ethiopia's one of the former ministers of Ethiopia. By the way, China now basically runs Ethiopia, right? So this is part of the problem. And for me, fundamentally, I just don't understand why anyone would listen to the WHO. And so if they're saying that we have to have a global coordinated thing, well, forgive me, but I'd rather Coco the Clown was running it than this lot, personally.
You'd rather what?
Coco the Clown.
Oh, right. I misheard something else. But I think for me...
I won't ask you what it was.
Don't. But, yeah, for me, I think as well, sovereignty, that's what we voted to leave the European Union. I know that's a completely separate issue, but the big part of that reason was we need to decide how we how our laws function, and we need to make our own decisions. And this idea that the World Health Organization could have some sort of veto over anything we decide to do in response to future crises, that does worry me a lot. And I was going to, put that question to Dr. Pankania as well, because that was on the 14th of January 2020, I believe, when the WHO tweeted that, there's no human, the evidence so far shows there's no human-to-human transmission, because that's what China had told them, that basically, been lied to by China. They were very much misled, to say the least, in terms of what effect COVID would have on the human population. And so that tweet is still up there, which for me is a very, very concerning, because clearly that was proven to be completely and utterly inaccurate.
Yeah, get in touch with how you feel about the WHO, GBViews at GBnews.uk. Let us know how you feel about it. And a lot of you indeed already have. Colin's been in touch, saying lockdowns didn't work in any country and WHO predictions were always without fail wrong. Exactly, they make Michael Fisher like the oracle, don't they, Colin? Thank you very much. And yes, there's loads of this coming into getting in touch. So WHO have already stated that they will order us to lock down and vaccinate if they decide we are under a pandemic. And this is what I think is a bit sinister, really. I don't see the need why, especially not Britain anyway, we're not Luxembourg, right? Luxembourg probably, could deal with everyone else looking after their own affairs for them. They're a postage stamp of a nation. But we are not, and we've navigated our way through it, rightly or wrongly with certain things, obviously, but quite successfully in the end. Why should we have someone who's basically in China's back pocket telling us how to behave?
Yeah, look, I agree. And tell us what you think. Somebody here, Mandy, has said that there's apparently an online petition which has passed 100,000 signatures, so has to be debated in Parliament. So we'll keep an eye on that, because it would be interesting to see what our politicians respond to this, because for lots of people who are Liberal and who want the UK to maintain its sovereignty, they will not take kindly to this. And I think people will be looking to Conservative MPs to say, hang on a second, we retain the ultimate power to set our own laws.
There's no logical reason why we should go along with this. GBViews, GBnews.uk, though, keep your views coming in. But after the break, are we heading towards a breakup of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain and, of course, Northern Ireland? We talk devolution and independence movements as well, but all of that comes after your latest weather.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We're on a bit of a repeat cycle at the moment. More hazy sunshine for most places today. Most of us will be dry until later, when there's the threat of some thunderstorms. Here is the washing machine responsible for the repeat cycle. Low pressure throwing up weather fronts, bringing moisture, but also bringing warm and humid air up from the south. Still a few leftover showers across northern parts of Scotland this morning. They'll take a time to clear away, but for most, after the downpours overnight, it's a fine day to come. Hazy sunshine and feeling pleasant enough in that sunshine as well. It will cloud over once more this afternoon across Northern Ireland and down to the southwest, the threat of some showers moving in. But as I said, for most of daylight hours will be dry, fine and quite warm, with temperatures in the high teens or low 20s, 18 in Glasgow and Belfast, maybe 24 in London. And then through this afternoon, we see the threat of those showers becoming more widespread over the southwest initially, but at the same time another weather front bringing some heavy rain to Northern Ireland, and the showers become more and more extensive, and particularly across parts of eastern England this evening and overnight. Some very heavy downpours are possible. May well get woken up by a flash of lightning or a rumble of thunder. Those storms set to drift out into the North Sea by dawn, so again, most places becoming dry once more by this time tomorrow. Temperatures generally 9 to 13 Celsius. Into tomorrow, some wet weather, certainly across the Northern Isles, possible at first, but for most it's a dry, fine day. Still a few showers again over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but generally bright conditions after those overnight thunderstorms clear through. So again, feeling pretty pleasant in the sunny spells. May turn a little hazy, the sunshine at times, but we'll still see those temperatures getting into the high teens or the low 20s. Do watch out, though, for those thunderstorms arriving overnight.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
every morning from 6 o'clock. We'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity. That's the question. That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, a very good morning to you all. It's just about to go 10:20. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning. And Mercy's had a little incident in the
I've got a bit of a cough, so that's why I'm crying, not because Patrick's upset me.
No, absolutely. I imagine the smell is enough to bring anyone to tears. But anyway, we've spoken a lot about the situation in Northern Ireland, of course, power sharing and the fallout since Brexit.
Yes, well, we haven't, however, spoken about those who wish for an independent Scotland and some who also see Wales as an independent country.
That's enough to bring a tear to anyone's eye, isn't it? And is it possible that we may not be the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland for much longer? GB News viewer and listener Dan is worried that this may well be the case. So Dan says, I'd like to see a discussion about devolution, which I think has gone way too far. We have the SNP in Scotland trying to break up the UK. And you can bet that if Scotland gets independence, Plaid Cymru won't be far behind in pursuing the same for Wales. Interesting one, this, actually, because it probably shouldn't say this, really, but I mean, I've got an infinite amount of respect for the Welsh for taking more money off the European Union than any other part of the United Kingdom and then voting, and more so than any other part of the United Kingdom, to leave the European Union, which I think is really good value. Well done, the Welsh.
Yes, well, is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland at risk as well? For The View from Wales, we're joined by James Evans, who's a member of the Senedd for Brecon and Radnshire. And for Scotland's side of the story, we're also joined by Christine Jardine, Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. Thank you for both joining us. Let's start with you, Christine. What do you make of the union at the moment, the state of the union, so to speak? Because the events that have been taking place in Northern Ireland at the moment, they have raised those questions again, haven't they, about how imminent that might be, the breakup, if at all?
Well, no, I don't think it's imminent because for it to be imminent, a majority of people in Scotland would have to want the breakup of the United Kingdom, and the majority of people in Scotland don't. The SNP talk about having the majority of seats at Westminster, but they only got 45% of the vote. And we had a referendum, and people voted against it. And the most recent opinion polls show that the economic crisis and the war in Ukraine has made people more aware of the benefits of the United Kingdom. So it's far from imminent. The SNP might want it to be imminent. They might like to tell us it's imminent, but it's not. And I think one of the reasons it's not is the strength of devolution. Devolution has worked for Scotland. It's continuing to work for Scotland. But as a Liberal Democrat, what I would like to see is a more federal approach throughout the United Kingdom, some reform of the Constitution so that England, areas of England, have devolution. We have devolution already for London. Why not for Cornwall or Yorkshire or Greater Manchester?
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Mayors, etc.
Absolutely, yes, although I suppose you could argue that London pays for everything else. But anyway, James Evans here, member of the Senate for Brecon and Radnorshire. Now, look, I'm a bit conflicted about this because I obviously voted for Brexit, ergo I quite like independence and self-determination. And so part of me is like, well, I suppose, really, I'd be a massive hypocrite, wouldn't I, if I said that, you know, I don't want Wales, well, I'd be opposed to Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland or whatever being independent. That said, I don't think Mark Drakeford can run a bath.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth there. No, I don't think the First Minister can run a bath, and that's the problem with devolution here in Wales. We've got the worst health outcomes of all the 4 nations. We've got the worst education standards. We've got one of the worst economies out of all the home nations. But being Welsh, we are proud people. We are very proud of our country, very proud of our culture, and very proud of our heritage. But there are a lot of people in Wales who are very proud to be part of the United Kingdom, and I'm afraid that in Wales we have a vocal minority, most of them who tend to live on Twitter under false names, who like to keep preaching that Wales is being let down by the United Kingdom government, that we're being forgotten, which is totally wrong. Wales has had more money from the United Kingdom government than what we have had before since the Prime Minister has been in situ. We in Wales do not want to be independent. We realise that we're part of something bigger, and we just need to stop giving airtime to the vocal minority who are trying to divide our country and drive a wedge between us and the United Kingdom, which I don't think the majority of Welsh people want.
Yeah, look, what I find amazing, Christine, is that people like Nicola Sturgeon, for example, are sick and tired of being ruled by Westminster as they see it, OK, despite the fact they've got a massive representation in the House of Commons, of course, and indeed devolution. But they're more than happy to be ruled by Brussels. And that, last time I checked, is much further away than London. Isn't that a bit weird?
Yeah, one of the points that we consistently put to the SNP is that the argument they make for being independent is exactly the same argument as was made for Brexit. And
exactly.
That the argument which they made for Remain, because they do claim that they were behind Remain, although they spent less on the campaign to remain in the European Union than they did on a by-election in Shetland, which only has 30,000 voters. So, you have to question how committed they were at that point. But the arguments which they make about independence are the arguments that they argued against, and they argue against when it comes to the European Union. So they can't have it both ways. Now, for me, my argument is consistent. I think we are much better off as part of a larger political and economic union, which has the 6th largest economy in the world and is able to provide protection in a pandemic for businesses, and is able now to make a real contribution to defending Ukraine from Russian aggression, to supporting the Ukrainians. Now, that to me is important. And much and all as I'm an internationalist, I think there is strength in size in the modern world.
Excuse me, Christine, you mentioned about federalism. What would be the benefits of federalism to the average person sort of on the street? Because if it would make them in any way poorer, then obviously that's not an option they would want to go for if they're not very passionate about it as a concept.
Poorer is the one thing it does not make anybody. It has not made anybody in Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland poorer. The benefits of devolution are that you have communities making decisions that affect them directly. Now, I wasn't a Brexiteer, as you no doubt know, but one of the arguments that was often used there was about having the right to your own decision-making process. Now, with devolution, you have that. You have power devolved to the most relevant and area closest to the communities. And it's been able to deliver things in Scotland like Borders Rail, colleges. Devolution can work. Just because you think Mark Drakeford or any individual politician can't run a bath, I think that's about Nicola Sturgeon. But that doesn't mean that the principle of devolution is wrong.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Christine. Yes, indeed. Right, James, sorry, just to bring you back in. I do wonder whether or not, if there was actually a referendum on this tomorrow in Wales, whether or not... I've got a strong... I love the Welsh. They're a very proud bunch, a massively proud, patriotic bunch. I think they probably would vote for total independence, I think. Do you not think? Maybe not?
No? No, I don't think that would be the case, no. Yeah, not at all. as I said, you get the vocal minority of people who push this agenda. The majority of people across Wales want to be part of something bigger. They understand that being a part of the United Kingdom gives us a world presence. It defends us with our national security. The UK government has got the fiscal firepower, as it did during the pandemic, to help our businesses that we don't have in devolution. And people are very proud to be British. You go to speak to a lot of people who are Welsh. They're very proud. You say the industrial heartlands of Wales powered the British Empire at one time. A lot of those areas are very, very proud of their culture and their heritage and the part they played in making Britain the greatest country in the world at one time.
Absolutely, and it still is. But Christine, I'll just lob it back over to you, really, because I wonder where it would end with devolution. You know, does Yorkshire become its own state? Does Liverpool, for example? You know, I mean, Liverpool, there's that famous phrase, isn't there? We're not English, we're Scouse. I mean, presumably that's where this ends up.
Now, devolution is different from becoming a separate state. Devolution is about devolving decisions down closer to the community where it's appropriate, the right decisions. You wouldn't devolve down, for example, foreign policy. You just wouldn't do that because you would have the federal state doing that, like you have in America. But you have decisions made in, if you want to take Yorkshire for an example, or Cornwall or something like that, you have decisions which are relevant to Cornwall made in Cornwall. Decisions in Scotland which are relevant to Scottish education, which was always separate from English education, Scottish health, it's got all the local priorities. Are decided at a local level. But the big macroeconomic issues, the foreign affairs issues, things like immigration are decided at a federal level, which the United Kingdom Parliament would become. But it would just mean that areas like Greater Manchester, for example, which now has its own mayor, would have more decision-making powers in the way that London does with the Assembly. I mean,
OK, all right.
have devolution for London.
So go on, James. I can see you're itching to come back. What do you want to say?
The one point I want to come back, and the problem is what we do have with devolution, even in Scotland and in Wales, they're run by quite nationalist, socialist governments who are hell-bent on centralising power around their governments. And one thing we do see in Wales is that they call for more and more powers to be devolved from Westminster to Wales, but then they don't like the localism element of it, of giving those powers to local decision-makers in councils. So that the nationalists can preach all they want about independence, but it's independence to give the government power and not empowering the people of the country, and that's the problem when you have socialists running the country.
OK, all right.
But you're talking about two different things, because I don't agree with independence, but I do agree with devolution. And I think devolution is the reason that Scotland doesn't want independence, and the majority of people don't, because they have a parliament which is making local decisions and has the powers to do it. Doesn't always, the Scottish nationalists don't always use all the powers it has, and I don't like the Scottish nationalist government, but that's a political thing. That's not
well, look, thank you so much, both.
It's spiced up towards the end, that. You'd love to see it.
Something tells me you won't entirely agree today, but thank you so much for joining us anyway.
First time I ever agreed with a Lib Dem, anyway.
Oh, here he is. He's got the last word in. Leave it, Christine. Leave it, all right? It's not worth it. No, I'm joking. No, James, thank you very much, James Evans, member of the Senate for Brecon and Radnorshire, and, of course, Christine Jardine as well. Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. Gosh, I like it when it kicks off.
I know, but it's still civil. We like it being civil. Civil debate there about the United Kingdom and whether we will see its imminent demise, but I don't think we will anytime soon. And let's not forget the UK government would basically have to grant any sort of referendum for independence.
Why can't England vote for independence from Scotland? We still have to stop paying for it. You know what I mean? Well, anyway, probably a bit controversial. Anyway, after the break, is the ongoing mental health crisis a result of a loss of meaning and purpose in some people's lives? So one of our audience asked the question, and we'll basically look to find out the answer if we can. There is a mental health crisis out there, people, so stay tuned.
A very good morning. It's 10:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Inflation has risen to its highest rate in 40 years, rising to 9% in the 12 months to April. It was 7% in March, and according to the Office for National Statistics, the further rise has largely been driven by increasing costs of fuel and energy. The energy price cap was hiked by 54% for the average household at the start of the month. A Conservative MP has been released on bail pending further investigation after being arrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences. The man, who can't be named for legal reasons, is in his 50s. He's also accused of abusing a position of trust and misconduct in public office. The Foreign Secretary says it would be very positive if the UK and the EU could negotiate a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that there must not be a delay. Liz Truss has set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Almost half of the nurses and midwives hired last year have come from abroad. It's prompted concern from leading nurses over how sustainable it will be to maintain the recruitment of the workforce. Figures from the Nursing and Midwifery Council show the majority of new appointees have come from India and the Philippines. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.24 to the dollar. The pound is 1.18 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,466.55 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity. That's the question. That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's about to go 10:36. In fact, it just has. And this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News Live, as ever, on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now our next story, we'll be discussing themes of mental health, and some viewers and listeners might find that a bit distressing. We will be discussing themes around perhaps suicide and things like that. So yesterday, Patrick did a monologue on the mental health crisis in the UK as millions wait for help that they just can't access while suicide claims the lives of British men at a truly alarming rate. Well, GB News viewer and listener Tim wrote in to ask whether modern culture has anything to do with it. He's asked, do you think the mental health crisis has something to do with the lack of meaning in our lives? We're obsessed with materialism and owning stuff when really a feeling of worth lies elsewhere. Art, literature, walks in the countryside, our wonderful history, those are some of the things Tim thinks give people meaning.
Yeah, indeed. As so many of you wrote in telling us about your struggles with mental health, and indeed there was a particular chap last night actually who reached out to me on Twitter. So if you are watching, Alan, you know, stay in the fight, mate. Thank you very much for getting in touch and sharing, obviously, your your personal struggles at the minute, and everything will get better. But anyway, obviously help is there if you need it. 24-hour hotline. Call 116123 to speak to a volunteer who can help you. That's the Samaritans, of course. So make sure you do give them a bell if you feel like you need to. Well, Rachel Kelly is a British author and mental health advocate, and she's worked as a journalist at The Times, and of course is the author of the books Black Rainbow, Walking on Sunshine, The Happy Kitchen and Singing in the Rain. And she joins us now. There she is. Fantastic stuff. OK. I mean, we really do have a massive mental health crisis in this country. What do you think the core reason behind that is, do you think?
Interesting, isn't it? I was very struck in that comment from Tim. He was saying that, maybe we have a problem where we're focused on material things, and maybe the answer is things like art and literature and taking walks in the countryside. Now, if you think about that for a moment, what he's saying in terms of sort of nourishing our well-being, they're all part of our sort of interior identity. It's what's inside us, how we think, how we feel. And I think that's a really crucial point in terms of good mental health and good mental well-being, is not looking for sort of outside affirmation, outside approval, outside status. So, that smart car, those material goods.
I've got to be honest with you. I'm absolutely terrible for that. I really regrettably, put a lot of my self-worth basically in what other people think about me, which is a shame, really, because I think most people hate me. But it's a really difficult situation, isn't it, for a lot of people there? Because I think now more than ever, we've got the Instagram generation. We've got these pictures bombarding us every single day with life is perfect, life is perfect, life is perfect. And actually, it isn't. And so I think that can kind of exaggerate how people will feel when things don't go too well. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think you make a couple of really good points there. I mean, I think, don't be too hard on yourself on sort of looking for yourself where you're not looking for yourself outside, because that is our culture. And as you say, it's absolutely exacerbated by social media. And the problem is we're comparing our insides with an outside. And actually what we're not really doing is all of us actually, we are made sometimes to feel anxious, to find life difficult. We're all the descendants of people who did run away from that lion. But what we're not doing is comparing our sort of true inner reality with other people's inner reality. We're looking at the exterior, the flash car, the beautiful house, the perfect children, the perfect outfit. And so that's a sort of mismatch, which I think is part of contributing to our poor mental health.
And what would you say to people who, because I've heard this a lot from people who have attempted or have thought about suicide, and they say it's not so much that, I think the world hates me, but it's the fact that the people I love and the people who love me, I feel like I'm a burden to those people, and actually they'd probably be better off without me. What do you say to people who think that way?
Really good point, though.
That's such a painful thing, isn't it? That there's that sense that there's a rationality at that exact moment when somebody's thinking of taking their own life, that they're actually doing it for very sort of well thought through reasons, which is part of the tragedy, really. I mean, I think that it's such a difficult area. But what I would say is that what we know for sure is that talking about it doesn't make it worse. So if somebody in your family or is feeling, got suicidal ideation or is feeling very desperate in that way, don't think that somehow by saying, are you considering taking your own life? That's not going to make it worse. It's actually better. And there's loads of studies showing that. So I think that would be my key advice, is if you can get somebody talking, be alongside them. Don't think that's going to make it worse. It won't make it worse.
No, it won't. And, I don't really mind admitting this. When the pandemic first kicked off, lockdown 1.0, as it were, and I was freelance. I lost 3 jobs in a day. I had quite a messy breakup. This and the other, kind of went nuclear, really. And, I was really struggling. I was really, really struggling. Because, I like I said to you before, I put a lot of my self-worth, which is a shame, in what other people think of me, but also what I do for a living, right? So my profession really is where I get a lot of my self-worth from, a lot of self-validation, as it were. And so when that all went, right, I was very, very lost. And I found myself just starting thinking things that I'd never thought before, to put it mildly. And actually it made me think, I can see how easy it is for people to slip into that mindset. And if anyone is watching now, I just wonder what you would say to them if they're watching this and they feel a bit, perhaps, dare I say, a little bit like I felt, you know, a year and a half ago, probably even worse than that. What would you say to them right now?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that is completely understandable. You know, that you would feel anxious and you would feel worried. I think sometimes there's this sort of culture, we've all got to be sunny all the time and we've all got to be happy all the time. That isn't the truth of human experience. So I think the first thing is a kind of acceptance that this is going to happen to all of us at different points in our lives, you know, be it be unemployment, bereavement, redundancy, divorce. These are the big triggers for these difficult times. So I suppose that's the first thing I'd say. You know, what we resist persists. So a kind of acceptance and a kind of allowance that this is part of the human condition. I think that would be the first thing I'd say. I think the second thing I'd say is something I've been doing a lot recently is, you know, in all our endeavours, in all our jobs, look at the two of you there, sitting there, great jobs. Jobs come and go, but values can stay. And if we focus on our values in terms of, you know, what really matters to us, you know, things like kindness, you know, our families, you know, integrity, honesty, making a difference to others. You know, of course, these are part of our employment as well, and they can be part of our working lives, but they can stay with us, whatever dramas happen to our lives. And just sort of even giving yourself a little bit of time just to sort of, I mean, I always like, you know, close your eyes. You guys probably can't just close your eyes, but just sort of feeling into, you know, that sense of values and what really matters to you. And you've always got that. And even if it's just, you know, giving a kind word to the barista in the coffee shop in the morning, that just reinforces your values.
Look, absolutely. Look, thank you so much. We'll have to get you back on. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, actually. In fact, I feel much better for it, actually. So there we go. Rachel, thank you so much. That's Rachel Kelly there, of course. And just to reiterate, of course, people, if you are struggling at the minute, as indeed a lot of people are at the moment, don't be scared to call 116123. You can speak anonymously to a trained volunteer, or, of course, that's Samaritans, by the way. Of course, get in touch with the NHS 999 if it's a proper emergency. But, yeah, don't suffer in silence, all right?
Yes, indeed. And Sean just got in touch, very timely, saying, my advice is to show more pieces about survival stories and how people have become strong under adversity, which is very apt because we have been doing that. And, you know, staying with mental health, if you haven't heard yet, Patrick has been raising some money for Mind Mental Health. And he's been doing so alongside in support of Nathan Dunn, who you can describe the Nathan Dunn story because he first appeared on your show.
Yeah, exactly that. So, well, first and foremost there, you can see my Just Giving page, which is justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. We raised about £1,000 yesterday. You did, people at home. Thank you very, very much. So, just again, it's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. We want to get to about 50 grand. We're just over 13 at the minute. Anyway, yes, so Nathan Dunn, basically, he's very, very open about this. You know, he's had his certain issues with his mental health in the past. You know, fair enough, absolutely fair enough, of course it is. And he's decided to basically turn that into something really positive, right? And to walk from John O'Groats to Land's End barefoot.
Which is over 1,300 miles, by the way.
Well, it's also insane, really, but for want of a better phrase. But, you know, it's incredible, really, because he's going to set a world record. And, yes, I believe we actually have got it. Is Nathan there? Go on, Nathan. Is he there? No? OK, maybe not. Hey, there he is. Good lad.
Just to recap, so Nathan is walking from the northernmost point of the UK to the southernmost point. It's 1,350 miles. It works out to about a marathon a day on his timeline. He's fundraising for the mental health charity Mind, and he joins us now live. Nathan, first question, most important question. How are you and how are your feet?
I'm doing good. It's been nice and sunny yesterday, and it's nice and sunny today. So, I'm always happy when it's good weather because it's been raining for the past 2 weeks. So,
exactly. How are the feet, mate? Because I mean, I saw a couple of pictures yesterday, and it didn't. It looks like it's getting a bit tough.
Yeah, every day is a different day, and some days they feel strong, and some days they feel really weak. So yesterday they felt really strong, and today they feel really weak.
And can I ask, because by the very nature of what you're doing here, right, you're spending a lot of time on your own. I imagine you've got a lot of time to think. You know, I'm just wondering, kind of, because this is really, really tough what you do. I mean, you can't underestimate how difficult this is what you're doing. And yeah, what's it like mentally for you at the minute? We're talking a lot, obviously, about mental health. We're trying to raise money for Mind. Yeah, what's it like for you there? You know, you're on your own. You've got a very, very arduous task there. What kind of things go through your head?
It's very difficult. I go through all of the emotions, I think, in each day. You know, there are parts of the day where I'm happy, parts of the day where I'm in pain, I'm frustrated. There are parts of the day where I get quite emotional, I'm just crying, and you know, it's like a whole day of therapy, really, within my own mind, because like you say, there's no one around. I don't see people for like 2 or 3 days at a time, and yeah, it's sometimes I don't have a signal on my phone, so I can't ring home. There's no hiding from myself out here, and that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted to find myself again.
And Nathan, if you could, can you just, for people who haven't sort of followed this story from the beginning, can you just very quickly tell us why you're doing this and why it's so personal to you?
Yeah, because I wanted to raise awareness for mental health, because I've suffered with it myself a lot. That led me to not wanting to be here anymore, and I was standing on a bridge and I flipped a coin and to decide what was going to happen, and from that point on I realised that I tried to get help within the NHS, and I was told 15 weeks, but you know, the charities out there, they can help you within it 1 day. So that's why it's important to try and help others now. I got help, and you can too if you just speak out.
But the point, I mean, fundamentally, goodness gracious me, mate, I can't tell you, how good it is that you're still in this world, right? And it's a good job that coin came down on the right side. But you are now helping other people by doing what you're doing. So, I'm absolutely sure that you've said there, it must be like a daily therapy session for you in a sense. So, you are in a way getting something out of what you're doing, of course. But really, you are saving lives, and you are an absolute hero. So, Nathan, mate, keep going. Goodness me, it's not easy what you're doing. It's easy for me to sit here in a studio in Paddington and say, keep walking barefoot across the country, mate. But, but we are all with you here, and you've got a lot of support. And yeah, I just want to say, well done, mate. Well done, and keep going, all right? We're all with you. So that's Nathan Dunn there, of course, who is raising money for Mind, and we are also raising money for Mind, of course. And collectively, between Nathan and us, we are actually about 17k now, I think. So
I think we're on more.
Wait?
I think so, but we'll update you. We'll give you the exact figure very shortly.
Just quickly, that link, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's, OK? If you can, times are tough, OK, I'm not ordering you to give us money, of course, but if you can, even just a couple of quid, then that would be great.
Yes, well, as we keep saying, it's Wednesday, so everything we're discussing today has been suggested by you, and our next topic comes from GB News viewer and listener Jean, who wrote in about the cost of meat, the rising cost of meat in this country. Her real question really got us thinking that we really should totally address this on our platform. I know it probably won't be very useful for some of the vegans and vegetarians among us, but obviously meat is a massive part of the British diet. Jean asked this: how come bacon is nowhere near decent anymore? There was a longer part of the question, which was, why is it so expensive as well?
How come bacon isn't decent anymore? Bacon's all right.
Oh, well, I love bacon, personally. But Catherine Meadows is the proud owner of a 108-year-old family-run butcher's, Nicholson's in Whitley Bay, and she joins us now. I mean, first of all, let me just put that Jean's question to you. She's concerned that bacon perhaps isn't of great quality anymore. She says that her full question was, I'd love to buy British meat, but I'd need a second mortgage. So much cheaper to buy New Zealand. How mad is that? And how come bacon is nowhere near as decent? Maybe you can help her.
OK, so morning.
Morning.
I think there's a couple of... Obviously, bacon doesn't come from New Zealand, so I think she might be relating to a different type of meat. So we'll tackle the bacon question first. I think maybe she's buying the bacon from the wrong source. A lot of bacon that is sold in big retailers has gone through a process that's called wet cure injection. and that means that it's injected with water when it's processed, which is why it's called wet cured. This makes it heavier, so your pack looks bigger, but when you cook it in the pan, obviously you lose that water in cook and process. And if you're looking at bacon in a pan and there's lots of white stuff coming out of it, that's what it is. And what she needs to be looking for is dry cured bacon. That's where the flavor, dry cured bacon gives you a lot of flavour. I'd also say don't always look for the back bacon. Back bacon's the most popular bacon, and it's what a lot of customers ask for, but actually the flavour comes from the fat. And
this is like
a lot
torture.
of
I'm
our
on a
back bacon
diet.
is now engineered with no fat on it, and that's what makes the flavour.
The fat is the best bit of the bacon. The fat is just the best bit of
Absolutely.
everything. Goodness gracious me, I miss it so badly. But yes, so in terms of the price of British produce, right, British meat, obviously specifically, are you noticing a change there? Is it going up? I mean, I imagine the energy crisis alone, because of all the farmers, etc., just have to run the farm. Their costs are going up, aren't they?
Yeah, it is going up massively, but so is everything else. I think it's a culmination of lots of things: the price of grain, the price of fuel, the price of electricity, everything all together, including staffing. All of those combinations is pushing the prices up. For us personally, we've seen a shift in shoppers, so they're not necessarily buying they're not coming to us and buying as much, but when they do come, it's a treat for them, so they're still spending with us, which is great. I think people are all too quick to want large quantities of things and lots of it, but actually what works better is if you have a little bit of something and it's really good, then you're still going to get satisfied.
I
love a buffet.
Yeah, it is definitely quality, not quantity, isn't it? For me, anyway. Maybe not for my co-host.
I once drank a pint of chocolate fountain at an all-you-can-eat buffet in Nottingham, and that's some stuff about me there that you didn't need to know.
That is absolutely true. But I did want to ask you that in terms of the patterns you're seeing with shoppers, because obviously, you're a family-run butchers, and people, when in a cost of living crisis, they might be turning to the cheaper budget supermarkets. I think a YouGov poll a couple of weeks ago found that Aldi is now at the top of the list in terms of the most popular supermarket. Are you finding that people are saying, you know what, I'm just going to have to switch to the cheapest supermarket food I can find?
We see a trend during the week, so I think during the week we can see that, but we've put lots of offers in place to try and stop that from happening. So we have a range that's 3 for £10, and we know that we can compete with the bigger retailers in terms of those things. We do see a spike at the weekend, so I think people are coming to us to say, look, we're not going to eat as much during the week in terms of meat, but at the weekend we're really going to treat ourselves, and we're going to buy it from somewhere where we know that they know where it's come from. We source weekly from farms. We see the livestock, we work with farmers, we work really hard on food miles, and all of that has an effect on how the meat tastes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, can I just ask, how do you have your steak?
Oh, medium rare.
Yes, get in. You can come back. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Lovely stuff. And it's Nicholson's, right? So, she's gone. Oh, well, fair enough. But there we go. Go to Nicholson's, I suppose, if you want some meat. Anyway, right, there we go. That was Catherine Meadows, the proud owner of a 108-year-old butcher's, which is great stuff. Loads of you have been getting in touch, and specifically a bit about the mental health charities, the mental health side of things. So we're obviously trying to raise money for Mind, and that link again, cheeky little plug, is justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. And yeah, loads of you basically just saying, look, all these Facebook and Twitter nonsense, this is Helen, and wanting to have material things doesn't make us feel good. And I agree with you, Helen, because I think, when you go on your phone or you go on Instagram, or not, I'm really on Instagram, but, you look at things and you see people that are lying.
As he's just said that, I've looked at his phone and the first notification is an
No,
Instagram.
it's not. Is it?
It is. Look, that's...
It is? Oh, well, yeah, but I've
So he's
got
lying.
408 of them, which is what I've never gone it. But anyway, one on the telly. But seriously, though, you see these people that are lying to you about their perfect lives. Oh, you're on a yacht in the Mediterranean. I bet you probably superimpose yourself onto that thing. But I think it gives us this impression, doesn't it, of, everything everything kind of being perfect in the world, and it isn't.
Yeah, and I do have to say, we are getting quite a substantial amount of emails as well, which, reflecting both sides of an argument, who are saying, actually, I don't buy there's this huge mental health crisis.
Yeah.
I think, actually, the more we keep, this is not my opinion, but these are the opinions of some of you, the more we keep sort of banging on, so to speak, about mental health, the more people think they have mental health conditions when perhaps they're just going through a bit of a down period. But hey, look, the data's the data, and if anybody thinks they have, the doctor always knows best in terms of diagnosing that.
Absolutely. I'm just going to give a quick shout out, just very, very quickly. JustGiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. Amanda, thank you very much for a tenner. Julian David, 30 quid. Suzanne Fox, 50 quid. Angela, 50 quid. We've got all these coming in. These are in the last couple of minutes, people, so thank you so much. Carol, a tenner. Thank you. Guys, I really, really appreciate this. Let's try to save some lives. It's justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. Come on, people, give what you can.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. It's just gone 11 o'clock, it's Wednesday the 18th, and you're watching GB News on your TV, radio and online.
Right, well, it's Wednesday, people, OK, which means one thing and one thing only. This is your show.
Yes, that's right. You've been getting in touch all week, letting us know what you think we should be discussing, and we've delivered.
We have indeed. We sure have, that's right. We're talking about Russian sanctions and if we should be stricter with North Korea. It makes it sound like it's a naughty dog, doesn't it? Which is very strict with North Korea. Anyway, right, and whether or not, of course, there is enough support for older workers. And also, as well, we're talking about what we teach our kids in school, from compulsory cooking classes to self-defence. Should kids be better prepared for the real world?
Certainly should be, I think. Let us know what you think. And the most important bit, of course, is your views. So get in touch and tell us what you're thinking. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. And that's all coming up in just a moment. But first, your morning headlines with Rosie Wright.
A very good morning. It's just 1 minute past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Inflation has risen to its highest rate in 40 years, rising to 9% in the 12 months to April. The rise has largely been driven by increasing costs of fuel and energy. Some food producers, like Premier Foods, who own brands like Mr Kipling and Oxo, have warned that their already increased prices will have to go up. Labour says they would now force a vote for an emergency budget in Parliament. The Chancellor says he's unable to completely protect people from global challenges. Our economics editor, Liam Halligan, says, though, we haven't seen the full impact of the war yet.
This inflation number in April is driven largely by the increase in that energy price cap up to 54% that we've all been talking about endlessly. That price cap rise was decided in February, before the war in Ukraine. So a lot of the inflationary impact of the war in Ukraine actually, and again, it gives me no pleasure to say this, is yet to come through.
A Conservative MP has been released on bail pending further investigation after being arrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences. The man, who can't be named for legal reasons, is in his 50s. The Tory Chief Whip has asked the MP to stay away from Parliament during the investigation. Scotland Yard says the offences are alleged to have taken place in London between 2002 and 2009. The Foreign Secretary says it would be very positive if the UK and the EU could negotiate a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that there must not be a delay. Liz Truss has set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. The Democratic Unionist Party is currently refusing to join the executive instalment until a solution is found. The Northern Ireland Minister, Conor Burns, told GB News the government couldn't idly stand by.
This is more important to get this right for our United Kingdom and for communities in Northern Ireland than almost any other foreign policy or economic objective, and that is our determination. We hope that the EU will re-engage with us in a spirit of compromise and create the necessary space to allow us to find a way through that. But we will legislate in the interests of our own country if that's what it comes to.
Is that a threat?
No, it's just a reality.
Boris Johnson has welcomed Finland and Sweden officially applying to join NATO and says it's a historic day for the alliance. The applications from both Nordic countries were spurred on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Swedish and Finnish NATO ambassadors visited the organisation's headquarters in Brussels to present Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg with their letters of application. All 30 members of the alliance need to approve the process, which could take up to a year. The parents of a teenager who died from an allergic reaction to a sandwich from Pret a Manger have set up a new trial to treat food allergies. The family of 15-year-old Natasha Eden-Labrahus are aiming to make food allergies history. They're investigating whether peanut and milk products taken under medical supervision could be used to treat common allergies. It could mean people don't have to avoid foods with small amounts of allergens due to their production. Almost half of the nurses and midwives hired in the last year have come from abroad. It's prompted concern from leading nurses over how sustainable it will be to maintain recruitment of the workforce. Figures from the Nursing and Midwifery Council show the majority of new appointees have come from India and the Philippines. Whilst overall recruitment is up, there's also concern of the numbers leaving the profession, many citing work pressure as one of the reasons for their resignation. Pollution was responsible for 1 in 6 deaths worldwide in 2019. New research published in the medical journal The Lancet found that air, chemical and water pollution accounted for 9 million deaths globally. That's a figure that hasn't changed now in 4 years. The number of deaths associated with pollution and extreme poverty, like having unclean water, has fallen. But that decrease was offset by increased deaths from outdoor pollution and toxic chemicals. In Seville, streets are closed, barriers are set up and officers are on alert as more than 100,000 Scottish football fans arrive in the Spanish city. Rangers supporters can already be seen partying outside the stadium as they look forward to the Europa League final. The last and only time the Scottish club has ever won a European trophy was half a century ago. They kick off against Eintracht Frankfurt at 7 tonight. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. The time is 11:06 and it's Wednesday today, and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muraki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online.
Right, well, Wednesday means one thing and one thing only, which is that it's your show, right? So the whole agenda is entirely led by what you want to hear about.
Yes, that's why we've been asking you all week to get in touch and set the agenda for us.
So we start off with David, who got in touch and asked if Putin was replaced as Russian president, would we, the West, still provoke them and keep sanctions in place. He also asked why we haven't gone after North Korea the same way. So we'll be speaking to experts from both countries, basically.
Yes, and do you think we teach our kids the right things in school? Yes, obviously we teach them maths and English, which is necessary, but should they be taught things as well like self-defence and perhaps cooking and even maybe finance lessons as well? Well, Joan and Lydia wanted to hear some ideas on this, so we'll discuss.
Yeah, if you're in an inner-city London comp, you might as well teach them how to wield a machete. But anyway, some of you have been getting in touch after yesterday's news. A Conservative MP had been arrested before released on bail on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences. You've been asking why the sleaze stories seem to be never-ending in Parliament. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, will join us to update you.
Yes, it's a packed show, but don't worry, we will still make time for your views as well. So get on your computer, send them in, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or your phone.
World now. You can do it on your phone.
Or your phone,
you can send
or
a
your
homing. You
tablet.
can send a homing pigeon if you really wanted to. Might fly, but we wouldn't actually don't do that. It's a glass building. It'll probably smash into it and die. Anyway, right, stay tuned. Right, now, with the Russian war in Ukraine dominating the news cycle for the last few months, many of you have been in touch to ask about how the UK conducts its foreign affairs. We get this all the time, actually, to be fair. The inbox, certainly at the start of the war anyway, was pretty mixed, with a lot of people going, oh, we've provoked Russia, we've poked the big Russian bear. Now, I think, we've seen things like what's happened in Bucha, for example. I think people have some people anyway, rode back a bit from that. But anyway, we had a message in from our viewer or listener, Bill, who said,
if Putin was to be replaced as leader in Russia, would the West still provoke the country and limit its economy? Well, the use of the word provoke there is obviously Bill's choice of word. Many would say we're not provoking them at all, we're responding. But many of you also asked about North Korea, the isolated dictatorship in East Asia, and just generally the power of certain states in the Far East. GB viewer David expressed his feelings on this, saying, why hasn't the world imposed the same full-scale list of sanctions on North Korea?
Well, North Korea is pretty heavily sanctioned, to be fair. But anyway, how do these two countries compare to one another? And how should the UK respond to threats or displays of hostility in the international community? And we are delighted to be joined by two experts right now to help us understand the complexities of these relationships. We've got Keir Giles, a senior consulting fellow at Chatham House, a rather nice fellow as well, to be fair, and an expert in the armed forces of the Russian Federation who spent a number of years in the USSR, and Professor Hazel Smith from the School of Oriental and African Studies, who's researched and written about North Korea for over 30 years. Can I start with you, please, the North Korea side of things? Because I've got to be honest with you, apart from the moon, North Korea is the place I most want to go. I want to be lied to. I want to see the show, OK? I want to see the kind of propaganda. I want to experience it. But are we harsh enough on North Korea?
You're asking me?
I am, definitely.
OK. Well, sanctions on North Korea. Sanctions are basically trade. So sanctions are about stopping exports and stopping imports into a country. And you can't get tougher sanctions on North Korea than you have at the moment, because practically all their exports are sanctioned and a lot of their key imports are sanctioned. So you're right to say that North Korea is actually more sanctioned than Russia is at the moment. You've got to be careful with sanctions because they hit the government to a certain extent, but especially if you're a poor country, they can hit the population. And North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world. The population is 26 million people. Many of your viewers will know there was a famine where nearly 500,000 people got killed in the 1990s. And the sad thing about sanctions at the moment is that they're hitting the people, and particularly agriculture, and that there's starvation re-emerging. Because unlike Russia, North Korea is not an oil-producing nation, and they need oil for basic food production. Most people in North Korea, normal people, get their food from local food production. And since sanctions were expanded a few years ago, food production has crashed. So they have complicated impact sanctions. Depends on the country. If the country's rich, there's less impact. If they're poor, there's more impact on the population.
No, absolutely, and I understand that you actually lived in North Korea, so I'm going to be returning to that very, very shortly. Don't worry, I can't wait to find out what that was like. But I'm going to lob it over to Keir. Keir, Russia, the Russian side of things. So, look, I mean, obviously, are we sanctioning them too much, too little? Is it a provocation? That was what our viewer or listener suggested anyway. Says that we're provoking Russia by slapping them with sanctions. Is that true, do you think?
No, not at all. As you pointed out, the sanctions are actually a response to what Russia has done rather than trying to goad Russia for no particular reason. And all of these stories about provoking Russia, they tend to focus around NATO enlargement, NATO accepting new members closer to Russia as being the main cause of Russia lashing out. But just in the last few days, President Putin has said in his own words that actually NATO enlargement never was a problem, which has pulled the rug under from a lot of these arguments that it was actually Western behavior that was driving Russia to invade its neighbors and commit all these atrocities. So that's based on a fiction. But the other part of the question is really important. Would sanctions still be in place if President Putin were to go? Now, first of all, of course, sanctions aren't to do with who's in charge of a country. They're to do with what that country actually does. We used to think that we knew the answer, that if President Putin went, somebody else who felt the same way as him about Russia and its place in the world and its relations with other countries would probably replace him. Because President Putin doesn't make this stuff up. He's just enacting what Russia thinks about how it should interact with the rest of the world. But that may now have changed because there will be plenty of people around President Putin, some of them possibly in a position to do something about it, who realize just how disastrous his choices have been for the country and how much damage it's inflicting, not just through sanctions, but even through just destroying the Russian military by hammering it against Ukraine, against the defenders of Ukraine.
Yeah.
So there might be some political change now.
And thinking about it more broadly, because, regime change isn't unlikely in Russia at some point in the future, not least because of Putin's age, I suppose, and perhaps his health. What will other leaders of these other dictatorships, perhaps in that region and beyond, what will they be looking at Russia for now? Will they be looking to see how this all plays out? Do you think the reaction we've had here in the West with NATO, they're going to be a bit worried about how we might react to them if they ever did anything? What do you think about that, Keir?
Well, it could well be that we're going back to a situation that we had at the beginning of the 1990s, where countries around Russia were most concerned not of a deliberate invasion from Russia, but from the instability and chaos actually inside the country spilling over and causing them problems simply because they're next door. And yes, there are other places around the world which will have been watching the outcome of Russia's colonial war to try and reassert itself as an empire over Ukraine. And some, like China, biding their time to see how this works out and which way they're going to jump in terms of who they support. But yes, the progress of this war of reconquest by Russia, won't be reassuring for any other country around the world that had similar designs on its neighbours and was thinking of launching a war of its own.
And let's just go to you, Hazel. What do you make of that, especially from the North Korean perspective? Because if you ask any ordinary person on the street, name a dictator, they will probably say Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-un, that was his father.
Either of them.
But yeah, they'll say either. Exactly. They're the two that will come into people's heads. What is the relationship between Russia and North Korea at the moment? And what do you think Kim Jong-un will be thinking at the moment watching this situation develop?
Well, there's two things. One is that geographically, North Korea borders with Russia. It's only a small border, 10 or 12 miles, and also has a 1,000-mile border with China. And the reason I raise that is from North Korea's perspective, geographically, China and Russia are much, much more important than the United States, than Western Europe. And those two countries, China and Russia, are both highly authoritarian countries. They're both relatively supportive, at least tactically, to North Korea. And so the impact of the rest of the world's disapproval on North Korea is highly diminished, because for North Korea, what counts is China and Russia, not the rest of the world. That's the first thing. The other thing, the paradoxical thing that North Korea has learned from the Ukraine-Russia issue is that it firmly believes that if Ukraine hadn't given up its nuclear weapons in 1993-94, Russia wouldn't have been able to invade it. So the paradox is that this reinforces North Korea's view that it needs to have a nuclear weapons program in order to prevent foreign invasion.
No, I can completely understand that, absolutely. Whether or not people agree with nuclear weapons, you can see the logic behind it. Of course you can. Hazel, I've got to ask you, what was life like in North Korea? Just talk me through it. So why did you go there? I mean, what happened? Come on, give me a life story.
Well, I'm an academic, but I've worked on North Korean food security for a long time. So I was invited in by UN World Food Programme and UNICEF to do work with them for a couple of years, which I did a long time ago during the famine and the 2000s. and it was a privilege to be there. And I think I have to give you a really disappointing, very mundane answer, in that for North Koreans, 26 million people of them, they're the same as you and I. They want their children to have decent jobs. They want to be able to not have to worry about putting food on the table. They don't really want to get involved in politics most of the time. It's not a Puritan country, so people like to go out and drink and a party. And actually, it's a very, very authoritarian government. But if like most places in the world, people want the same things as you or I, and that's the sadness of it, that they're not able to do that.
Just to say, Keir, sorry, you are a phenomenally interesting chap, but I've got to be honest with you, you're completely overshadowed by Hazel in this instance. So, Hazel, how afraid are people of that? Because you see they're kind of clapping maniacally and crying when one of them dies. Is that genuine?
Well, you know, I'm old enough to remember Princess Di's funeral and everything.
That's fair.
And a lot of people from outside the rest of the world were wondering why all these millions of people were appearing on the streets. That's a performance. It's like the Olympic Games. People practice for those things. I remember when, in 2011, when the last leader died, I wasn't in the country, but I was talking to people by phone to Pyongyang on that day, and I say, what's happening today? Because the TV news were just showing the official moaning. And people going to work. Most people are getting on with their lives and going to work. So again, I think we have to be a bit careful, because we wouldn't judge, we wouldn't want people outside our country, outside the UK, to judge how normal people react to events. By looking at the highly choreographed parades that we have on various occasions. So I think we've got to be a little bit careful.
Well, we have. It's a really fair point. Keir, go on. I just want to know, from your perspective, what happens if Putin goes? What would the procedure be, in your opinion, about how we would go about, or someone would go about, replacing Putin? Because I wonder whether or not it'll just carry on until he dies.
Quite possibly, yes. We don't know what the procedure would be if he does keel over, partly because, of course, he doesn't want us to know what the procedure would be. There's no doubt he must have thought about a succession. He must have thought about something to provide stability, not so much for the country, but for his family, his fortune, and so on. But obviously, he's not going to tell anybody what that is, because that would probably precipitate it actually happening. But the biggest problem Russia has at the moment is there will be people in positions of power now who are starting to have to face the choice of loyalty to President Putin, who put them there and who maintains them there, or loyalty to their country, and trying to find some way of stop it being driven down a hole as it is by the current decisions of President Putin. And that's going to be the biggest driver for change. It's not what ordinary people in Russia want. They have no influence on this process at all. It's the people who have the leverage and have the power to actually bring about some kind of political change.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us and answering our viewer and listener questions as well, and giving us some life stories as well. That was really enjoyable. Thank you both. Keir Giles there from Chatham House, and Hazel Smith, Professor Hazel Smith from the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS.
Yes, I cannot. I have to go to North Korea. I have to go. But anyway, there we go.
Interesting story, actually, whilst we're on this. This is a completely true story, I promise.
Here we go.
People might not believe me, but it is true. Yesterday, I was watching Vladimir Klitschko, right, on the telly.
Right.
And I said, you know, just under my breath, I was with my daughter, she's 7, and I said under my breath, oh, Vladimir's such an attractive man, he's so handsome. And she said, Mummy, you're not allowed to say that about Vladimir Putin. And I said, no, not about Putin. This is a different Vladimir. And I was like, how come he's called Vladimir too? Yeah. And I just realised in my head, even my 7-year-old hates Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting, actually.
Yeah, I might need to reconsider
she's very
what
switched
she's
on,
watching.
Clearly, yes. I mean, she's always been pro-Ukraine, though, even before it was cool. But anyway, right after the break, we'll be discussing another scandal brewing in Westminster as a Tory MP has been arrested and indeed released on bail over rape allegations. But first, here's the weather.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Warm, sunny spells for many of us through the rest of the day. There will be some rain or showers later, and the risk of thunderstorms towards the southeast this evening and overnight. At the moment, we're in between weather fronts, and in between these fronts, a plume of humid air moving up from the south will bring the threat of showers and thunderstorms later, before a cold front brings some rain to the west as well overnight. But ahead of that rain, plenty of sunny spells, the best of the sunshine across much of Scotland, central and eastern England. The sunshine turning more hazy towards the south, west, and some showers making an appearance into Cornwall by this stage. So 16 Celsius for Plymouth, 18 for Glasgow, 24 there for London. So feeling pleasant in the sunshine, but it doesn't last for the west. Cloud building, wet and windy weather pushing into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and then some thunderstorms, lively outbreaks of rain with hail and lightning spreading into East Anglia and the southeast overnight. Risk of some intense rain in places, but they do clear through quite quickly, and then clear spells by the end of the night. A relatively warm night to come, and a bright start to the day once that rain has moved out of the way. So Thursday's looking like another fine day for many, with plenty of sunny skies, and there will be a keen breeze towards the west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers here, but otherwise for many it's fine, with temperatures reaching 21 to 23 Celsius, 18 for Belfast and 20 for Glasgow. Clear spells continue into Thursday evening. Further showers to come, I think, for northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and again it will be fairly blustery here. And those showers become a little bit more widespread on Friday. But the weather tends to settle down somewhat into the weekend. Plenty of fine weather to come. A bit cooler, with temperatures returning to around average.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 11:26, and this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now many of you have been getting in touch about the latest sleaze scandal brewing in Westminster after a Conservative MP was released on bail after being arrested on suspicion of rape. And sex offences Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, said she was worried that there were once again appalling accusations against a parliamentarian.
Yeah, it's important to say these are obviously at the moment anyway just accusations, but of course it's pretty disturbing stuff anyway. But for the latest on this, our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, what is the latest?
Well, I mean, this is a protracted investigation. It's been going on for more than 2 years now, since January of 2020. But this MP was arrested. We got news of it yesterday from Scotland Yard confirming that a man in his 50s had been arrested on suspicion of indecent assault, sexual assault, rape, abusing a position of power and misconduct in a public office. Now, Scotland Yard didn't confirm that this was a Conservative MP. That came from Westminster, the Whip's office for the Conservative Party, for the Conservative MPs in Parliament, coming out and confirming that a Conservative Member of Parliament had been told to stay away from the parliamentary estate while this investigation is ongoing. So we don't know if they were detained overnight, but certainly news this morning that they have now been released on police bail while the investigations continue. The offences relate to a period between 2002 and 2009. So you're talking about a 7-year period. Wow. It's quite some time ago now as well. And also we're told that the alleged offences are said to have taken place in the London area. So as I say, protracted and long-standing investigation, it seems, by Scotland Yard, but they've now moved to the stage where this MP has been arrested, presumably interviewed, and the allegations put to this individual. It will now be for, you know, a waiting game to see what happens in terms of whether at some point this MP is charged. If they are, then their name will be released publicly. We have now a standing protocol where unless someone is charged, we don't tend to reveal an individual's name because they are entitled to the same level of anonymity as victims do as well, because, of course, you are innocent until you prove guilty. And issues around the likes of Cliff Richard and so many people that were caught up in this Westminster paedophile scandal, the VIP paedophile scandal, many of the allegations that turned out to be false.
Well, that's right. But that was credible and true at the time, wasn't it? Quotes.
And these people were, you know, hounded really very publicly for quite a period of time before eventually clearing their names. So as a rule, these individuals, until they're charged, we don't get to find out about
Well, of course, we'll keep on top of that story and bring our viewers and listeners any updates on that. But I believe you have a breaking story for us as well.
Yes, reports coming through now from Scotland Yard, worrying reports of a 13-year-old boy who has been arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences. Now, this individual, we're told, was arrested in West London yesterday by counter-terrorism detectives. He was held and questioned, and it relates, we're told, according to Scotland Yard, to the dissemination of terrorist material. In other words, extremist material that we think has been shared online. It is Islamist related. You remember, of course, yesterday we were talking about far-right extremism following the conviction of a young man called Alex Davis who set up a far-right group. Well, it just shows you that Islamist extremism is a problem, and it is actually the overriding problem. Far-right extremism, although it's growing rapidly, pales in comparison to the threat from Islamist extremism. It is still a problem. It is a problem, particularly according to the police, where young and impressionable people are getting caught up in that. So at this stage, it is just an arrest, a 13-year-old boy arrested. He has now been bailed, we're told, to return to a police station in mid-June.
It does worry me, sorry, but just quickly, it does worry, I'm really glad you've said that, because all too often you hear about this, you know, the growing far-right threat. And OK, fair enough, it may well be growing, I'm sure it probably is, and certainly the other thing, we shouldn't ignore that. But what that kind of serves to do, in my opinion, is is to kind of detract from the main threat, which is Islamism. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think both things can be true. They're not mutually exclusive things. But Mark, I did just want to ask you. You mentioned he's 13, which will be the detail most people will be most shocked at. Yeah. Is he the youngest person who's been arrested from what you can remember?
Previously, I think there has been, as shocking as it is to contemplate this, but there has been a 13-year-old arrested previously, again Islamist related. But yeah, so, I mean, that is the youngest age range. I don't think there is anyone younger than that. And it's shocking, I mean, that it's a boy, but not charged with any offences yet. The investigation is still ongoing, but as I say, arrested and now bailed to return as this investigation continues into the dissemination of extremist material.
Mark, thank you very, very much. Mark White there, of course, our Home and Security editor. And look, what do you make of that, people? OK, 13-year-old apparently arrested on suspicion of disseminating Islamist material, terror offences, I suppose you could say. But we're going to delve into my inbox right now, see what you guys have all been saying. GBViews at gbnews.uk. And loads of you actually have been getting in touch. What's happening all over the world? That's from Carl. Carl's clearly a big picture kind of guy.
Good existential question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is the meaning of life, Carl?
Funnily enough, lots of you have been enthused by our conversation about bacon earlier. We spoke to a butcher from Nicholson's. Lots of you getting in touch with your opinions on bacon. George says, as an ex-pig farmer, I can tell you another reason for poor bacon and pork, because I can't remember her name now, but one of our viewers or listeners we read out, her question was, what's with the quality of bacon these days? Well, George, who's an ex-pig farmer, says it's because of cheap pig food, because you need the protein to come from quality white fish, and it comes from cheaper stuff. It can make the meat.
I don't know. I've heard that actually pigs can live very well off a diet of Essex gangsters. But there we go. Anyway, right, after the break, what subject should we be teaching our kids in school? We'll be speaking to an education consultant and a martial arts teacher who'll be in the studio. Before that, here's this morning's news.
It's 11:30. Good morning. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Inflation has risen to its highest rate in 40 years, rising to 9% in the 12 months to April. It's gone up from 7% in March, and according to the Office for National Statistics, the further rise has largely been driven by the increasing cost of fuel and energy. The energy price cap was hiked by 54% for the average household at the start of the month. A Conservative MP has been released on bail pending further investigation after being arrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault offences. The man, who can't be named for legal reasons, is in his 50s. He's also accused of abusing a position of trust and misconduct in public office. The Foreign Secretary says it would be very positive if the UK and the EU could negotiate a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that there must not be a delay. Liz Truss has set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Boris Johnson has welcomed Finland and Sweden officially applying to join NATO and says it's a historic day for the alliance. The applications from both Nordic countries were spurred on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Swedish and Finnish NATO ambassadors visited the organisation's headquarters in Brussels to present their application yesterday. Almost half of the nurses and midwives hired in the last year have come from abroad. That's prompted concern from leading nurses over how sustainable it will be to maintain recruitment of the workforce. Figures from the Nursing and Midwifery Council show the majority of new appointees have come from India and the Philippines. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.24 to the dollar. The pound is 1.17 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,466.18 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's just about to go 11:38, and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Murray, and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
We certainly are. Now, in the UK, we have a world-leading education system from primary schools, do we?
Do we?
No, we don't.
Wrote this? Fake news.
No, absolutely. No, you're fake news. Anyway, right, OK, so we've got an education system.
It's an education system.
It's an option.
Yeah.
And, yes, exactly. So, yes, but increasingly we receive emails from you at home questioning what isn't being taught to students as much as what is.
That's why GB viewer and listener Joan got in touch and said this: why don't they reintroduce home economics that used to be taught in schools? Now, many schools do actually offer food tech or home economics. I know my daughter's school has like cooking, baking club after school or whatever, but great. It's not, sounds what, great?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I didn't know you were a bit of a baker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you like baking?
No, I like eating what other people bake.
Fair enough. Well, it isn't compulsory in state schools, obviously, and it's not taught in many, I don't think, either.
No, indeed. Right, OK, so many of you have been asking whether the government should incorporate more so-called life skills, like household budgeting. I think I'd agree with that. Tax courses, basic DIY into the curriculum, or course in London, how to defend yourself against a knife.
Well, we're pleased to be joined this morning by Freshta Raper, who is an education consultant with over 35 years' experience working with the British primary and secondary education systems. Now, I'm sure you heard our back and forth there, trying to question whether we do really have the best education system. I personally think our education system's not very good, state schools at least. What's your opinion on the system as a whole? Let's ask you that first, and then we'll get on to the rest.
I think personally, as I have been abroad and I've been in many different countries, very, very rich, oil-rich countries, I've seen the education system. You can't even compare with those countries. My view is excellent. My view, there are a lot of good opportunity they offer to the student. There are many doors is open to the student. The resources are absolutely excellent. The government, for example, is one of the government with the highest expenditure in budget for education spending. You can't compare this with many countries, even though they are oil-rich country. I have done a lot of consultancy job abroad in the Middle East, one of them the major for Iraq, Turkey, and Jordan, or all the Middle Eastern country. I can say that the opportunity here is vast. You can't compare it. But even though the opportunity is vast, we still have to have a continuous work on that field. As you just mentioned, education should not be just a core subject, should not be just maths and science, because even though the core subject will
Sure. And that's the fundamental point, isn't it? Because you have the core subjects, and sometimes I feel like half of what they're teaching in the core subjects, they never actually use in life. Should we be making things compulsory, like financial budgeting, taxes, for example, cooking? I know people who went to university still not being able to cook for themselves.
Excuse me, I cook loads. I'm a great chef.
Okay, clean for themselves.
Yeah, clean, fair. Okay, you got me there.
So should we be teaching these compulsory?
I think it should be from year 7, even in some stages from primary, it should be compulsory to come to year 7. I can see months when I leave the house, my son, because he took a food technology from Key Stage 3, for example, I depend on him most of the time on cooking and baking, and he will have a very, very bright future with a future girlfriend or wife or whatever he chooses with. So it is very, very crucial these life skills will be taught.
No, I absolutely. I mean, look, I agree with a lot of what you've just said there. Thank you very much. Sorry, it's a little bit short and sweet, but we get very squeezed for time on a Wednesday because we have to go to Prime Minister's questions. Not to say you're not as important as Boris Johnson, of course, but thank you very much. Fresh to Rapey there is an education consultant with over 35 years' experience in the education system. Right, now, keeping up with this theme a little longer. GBNews viewer Lydia got in touch to say, I suggested to my 13-year-old daughter that all secondary school-aged girls are taught self-defence. I think this is an absolutely cracking point, Liam. I think you should be. For one of their PE lessons, basically. I, for one, would feel happier if my daughter had more skills to defend herself from predatory males. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that particular one.
Yes, well, we have somebody here in the studio to tell us all about self-defence and martial arts. Rafael Nieto, founder of Zendu Martial Arts and the world, European and British kickboxing champion from 1994 to 96, joins us now, and he was showing us some moves, practising keeping Patrick's
I'm in the danger zone.
Yeah, Patrick's very much. I have to say, look, I could...
That's just to prove that it works.
Just to prove that it works. Can we just see, I think our viewers can just see that you've got one foot in an ankle boot, have you, as well? Can you still do me?
Look, I'm of a small stature. I have a small build. I could probably be kidnapped by a 10-year-old, to be honest. Do you think people like me and younger girls should be training themselves to perhaps know how to, defend themselves?
Your size is irrelevant. You can defend yourself with one finger.
Gosh.
Yeah?
You are quite a scary man.
No, it's the truth. The truth is self-defence is very simple to teach.
Right.
But what we're teaching as well in the martial arts is confidence, flexibility, state of mind. All those things come with the martial arts. The self-defence itself is actually very simple and not very hard to do.
Well, I don't know, I've held my hands up to this before. I mean, you have a daughter, obviously. As far as I'm aware, at the minute, I don't have any children. But if I did have a daughter, I think I'd be, I don't want to say a worse dad, but I'd be very much a case of, like, if she was 16, she wants to start going out, I think I'd be like, you've got to learn some form of self-defence. I mean, I don't understand why we don't do this more often. It makes sense, doesn't it?
I don't understand why this hasn't been in the curriculum for years. We teach schools. We go to schools to teach, and we have schools come into our clubs. We run 5 clubs in central London. We have about 600 children from 4 years old up to teenager. And it's such a great thing to do. Why? Confidence, flexibility. Parents also, we teach them in conjunction with parents, so they get homework sheets. If they do their homework, they get their grading. So it's kind of a joint effort with the parents. I can't...
Is it a very reassuring thing to know about yourself that you're basically hard as a coffin nail?
Yeah.
Do you have any daughters?
I have.
And do they bring their boyfriends around at all? Are they old enough to have them? Because I wouldn't be coming around if you're...
Listen, she's so tough that we don't have to worry about her at all.
Fantastic. No, but seriously, I mean, as well, you look at it now, and we're talking about practical skills, essentially. Sure. And I always bang on, don't I, about, I don't understand why there's some stigma around, teaching people to be plumbers. Not saying definitely go back to the old secondary modern type thing, but, a bit of that maybe. Practical trades, all right, fair enough. But practically being able to defend yourself in an increasingly more day, especially in this city, London, right, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
Why argue with something that's self-evident? And also what martial arts teach you, which is something very important, is awareness. Because normally what happens is people now are walking down the street and you're not aware of anything. You're either on your phone, you're on... And this is what it does. It focuses your mind, because situations you can normally avoid, I don't say everything, but you can normally avoid if you can see them coming.
Yeah, and very finally, I'm sorry, as we say, we've got Prime Minister's questions
Prime
coming up.
Minister.
I'd
rather have this than Boris Johnson.
I know, honestly. But it's a cost of living crisis, isn't it? People are perhaps thinking about cutting back on the things that aren't essential at the moment. You know, for the ordinary family, can they afford to send their kids to do martial arts training at the moment? I mean, what kinds of costs are we looking at?
Well, what I try and do is I always give, especially children, introductory classes, and then we look at the finances, and if necessary, we'll help. Because I want as many kids to train with me as I can. I've been doing this since I was a child.
You're pretty good at it as well.
I'm not bad, actually. I have my moments. But I just think that it's important, if we can, to give children a chance to defend themselves. And defending is not just in the physical sense, but also in the spiritual sense.
No, look, absolutely. Now, go on, give yourself a cheeky plug. What's the name of what you do, and where can people find you?
Zendo Martial Arts.
Yeah.
We're on the website. Please, if you give us a call or log in, try a trial class with us and see if you enjoy it.
Right then, bring me back into camera, people. Get me in the face. Hey, there we go. Good stuff.
Goodness.
Raphael, you're a legend. Thank you very much. Raphael Nieto, founder of Zendo Martial Arts and World European... No, OK, I'm alive. World European Kickboxing Champion.
Gosh, on that note, I think we'll end it here. And this has been, of course, your show of your stories. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back again tomorrow. Don't go away, as we say, because Gloria will be bringing you Prime Minister's questions live up next. But first, the weather.
Well, hi there, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Warm, sunny spells for many of us through the rest of the day. There will be some rain or showers later, and the risk of thunderstorms towards the southeast this evening and overnight. At the moment, we're in between weather fronts, and in between these fronts, a plume of humid air moving up from the south will bring the threat of showers and thunderstorms later, before a cold front brings some rain to the west as well overnight. But ahead of that rain, plenty of sunny spells, the best of the sunshine across much of Scotland, central and eastern England. The sunshine turning more hazy towards the south, west, and some showers making an appearance into Cornwall by this stage. So 16 Celsius for Plymouth, 18 for Glasgow, 24 there for London. So feeling pleasant in the sunshine, but it doesn't last for the west. Cloud building, wet and windy weather pushing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, and then some thunderstorms, lively outbreaks of rain with hail and lightning spreading into East Anglia and the southeast overnight. Risk of some intense rain in places, but they do clear through quite quickly, and then clear spells by the end of the night. A relatively warm night to come, and a bright start to the day once that rain has moved out of the way. So Thursday's looking like another fine day for many, with plenty of sunny skies, and there will be a keen breeze towards the west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers here, but otherwise for many it's fine, with temperatures reaching 21 to 23 Celsius, 18 for Belfast and 20 for Glasgow. Clear spells continue into Thursday evening. Further showers to come, I think, for northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and again it will be fairly blustery here. And those showers become a little bit more widespread on Friday. But the weather tends to settle down somewhat into the weekend. Plenty of fine weather to come. A bit cooler, with temperatures returning to around average.
Every morning from 6 o'clock.